Hey, gang, welcome to the Power of Nine podcast. I am your host, Aaron Eggert. Today's guest is a Peloton riding, revenue driving, serial entrepreneur that you all need to meet. Please welcome my guest, Garrio Harrison.
Thanks for having me on the show, Aaron. Looking forward to this conversation, man. I love that intro.
Yeah, man. So you and I have known each other for a handful of years. Do you remember when we first met?
Um, yeah, actually, it was at Fueled, but um, yeah, I think you were just coming up to meet with Kyle, and we got introduced.
Yeah.
But I remember the time when we really got to know each other. I'll never forget it. It's when I started my first company, or after Fueled, and you and I met up for lunch. And ever since then, I've just considered you a buddy, and been learning a lot from you ever since.
What did we have for lunch? I don't remember. Do you?
Oh my goodness, yeah, it was. Oh, geez, I remember it was out in the burbs at no, it wasn't Macaroni Grill. I can't remember. I can't remember the exact place, but I remember the conversation.
All right, good. Well, that's good. I'm glad that you remember the conversation, but not the food. That's a good sign for a good conversation. Um,
Exactly.
so I'm going to jump right into it here. One of the things that I found to be like super interesting about you as I started to get to know you, and I think I maybe met you like 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, hey, so you've got some type of accent, and I don't even know what that is. So fill me in on that. And you're like, yeah, I'm Jamaican. I'm like, oh, all right. Well, there's a little insight there that I never knew. So, I think that's an area I want to start out at is talk to me a little bit about like your upbringing in Jamaica, paint me a little bit of a picture of what, childhood was like and things like that for you growing up with your family.
Yeah, we were an entrepreneurial family, so the running a business and having it be integrated into your life is, it's kind of in my DNA, right? So my mom was an entrepreneur in the family, which is, kind of unusual back in the day, of having the the woman being the the one that is starting a business, right? And my dad was had a stable full-time job, um, doing technology for the police force. My mom decided to start a prep school because she just believed that every kid deserves a quality education, um, and the way that she saw it, being done in Jamaica wasn't up to her standards. So she developed, started a school, which I ended up being a student of, to solve that, to address that need that she identified. Growing up, that was kind of life, right?
Yeah.
Like, I would, go to school with my mom, um, you know, being the principal's kid, you had to make sure that you weren't, um, you're always on your best behavior, right?
Yeah.
So discipline was something that became, just, integral to my day to day as a child.
Mhm.
Um, but getting to see just how she ran the school, like the ups and the downs, the decisions that she made, getting to see, how she sold, right? How did
Mhm.
she convince parents to send their kids to the school? It's one of those things where you get to say, I'm sitting in the principal's office and I'm not in trouble, right?
Right. Right.
But I'm getting to see just
Talking
kind
to
of
mom.
just talking to mom, yeah, just seeing how
Yeah.
she ran the school, how she, planned planned a budget, how she figured out what was gonna be in the cafeteria for lunch, like just
Right.
seeing how the sausage is made in a business. And
Sometimes,
then
sometimes literally, right?
literally seeing how the
In the
sausage is made.
cafeteria.
um, but yeah, and dad was just, you know, what you would expect from someone who was, in the military, in the Navy, in the police force, again, a lot of discipline, but also, intentional with our decisions and our plans as a family. It was the the family, the whole idea of the family being the business and everything else being a revenue stream actually came from him, right?
Yeah.
So my mom's passion and her drive, that was an investment. Or my parents talk a lot about planting seeds, so that was the seed that as a family we were planting, and I got to see and be a part of nurturing growing up. And his job was the revenue stream that made that possible until that seed was able to grow on its own, right? So that, growing up, that was literally life, man. Like,
Yeah.
you're just seeing how it gets done, seeing how decisions are made. My parents never hid difficult decisions from me. They would always explain the why behind it, but still expose me to the things that you know technology and allow me to chase my passions as well, right? So yeah.
So you said towards the beginning there that it was different at that time. What I'm thinking, like the '80s, sometime, and of being a women-owned business, right?
Mhm.
Was it even more odd because it was in Jamaica?
No, it was
No.
kind of the same deal, right?
Okay.
Women back then, when I was born, were more homemakers, right?
Mm. Hmm.
The brunt of childcare and those sort of things would be heavily on the woman, and the men will go out and earn the bread. That
Right.
was
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
the popular narrative at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, my parents just didn't subscribe to that. They
Yeah.
were
I love that.
partners in the business of life, right?
Yeah, yeah. My dad ran a printing press, and my mom was an office manager. And I went to work with my mom. It's just we weren't talking over curriculum and talking over school. I think it was a printing company.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was collating things and things like that. So I can totally understand, by having that dynamic of that drive of hard work ethic and moving things forward. So
That's pretty cool. So you were able to see, like, your how, to slaughter a metaphor, the the bacon that got brought home. You got to see
yeah,
how
for
that
sure.
got made, right?
Yeah, right. And I mean, it was all about work ethic, and it was these weren't high paying jobs by any means, but it was all about just getting the job done, and that, it was that grind. And so you get an early respect for people with hard work ethic, and that's basically that, the type of person I am too, but it's a totally part of your DNA, right? Like there's as I've gotten to know you, you're all about that hard work ethic. And I mean, you and I sometimes will jump on a call and you know it's 8 in the morning, you've already been working for 3 hours. So work ethic is definitely in your DNA. So as you talk to me a little bit about that transition from Jamaica into, and then you went to school in Iowa, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I came to Iowa for school. Uh, Originally Luther College, ended up transferring to Upper Iowa, and that's where I graduated from.
Yeah.
And yeah, during that time, yeah, you do all the things that college kids do.
Yeah, yeah,
It's no different in cornfields hanging out
Yeah,
than
right.
it is anywhere else.
I think I 100% totally understand where you're coming from there, and we won't get into any of those details. So talk to you. So what was your first job out of college?
Ernst and Young.
Ernst Ernst and
Yeah.
Young. That is not what I expected you to say.
Yep. That
Yeah.
was
So
that was so I interned at the American Red Cross, but the first, like, full time job that I had was working in the creative department at Ernst & Young.
Really? And then
Yeah.
was that a good foundation for you to understand? So that's super corporate, right? Like, was that a catalyst for you to like, okay, I got to get out of corporate, or like, oh, this isn't so bad?
It was actually the catalyst for realizing that the the part of the part of marketing that was going to be the part that I enjoyed the most, and that was literally, it was foundational. So my RA in college, um, who uh, he was working at UI, and he got me the interview, um, and that's how I landed that gig. But out of college, you're hanging out with your buddies. He was a really good friend of mine, and the thing that I enjoyed most about working at EY had nothing to do with graphic design.
Hmm.
It was the conversations that we would have when at happy hours, when we would bring I would get to tag along when partners were bringing folks out to drinks, and the conversations around just business and managerial finance, and um, really unpacking where revenue streams were coming from in organizations. Where was there opportunity for growth? Being a part of those conversations
Mm-hmm.
was instrumental. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. Like I would get to work, and as you're doing design and you're making, putting together the reports and all the good stuff, I'd be more interested in the reading of what was in the reports than was actually the way it looked,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And I just realized that, like, I want to be playing on that side of the fence versus you know look and feel, because it was just too subjective for me.
Yeah, yeah.
But numbers weren't.
And I feel like so is kind of when we were doing our prep call, you had a series of like creative jobs, but you didn't really feel like you were really getting the opportunity to use your skills until you landed at Field Collective, or at the time, which was Coco, right?
Yeah, it was more. So I did a lot of creative jobs throughout my career, but I was always on the um how do I put this? So creativity is one of these things that is pretty subjective, and by extension, you kind of wait for strokes of genius to strike before things get produced. That's kind of the stereotypical creative, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
but when you're talking about getting stuff done, and things that move the needle, and things that deliver results, you kind of have to put them into some sort of a system of delivery, right?
Yeah,
And that's what I became really good at throughout my
yeah,
career, was
yeah,
taking, putting constraints around creative projects, giving those constraints to creatives, letting the creatives do what they do, and then holding them accountable to end results.
yeah,
That became kind of my niche, my jam. But it was always a secondary thing versus the role that I was actually doing. Um, what the job title was, right? It was
yeah,
just my way of doing creativity, which was just what I needed to be able to know when something was done so I can move on to the next thing, right? And it fueled that became a superpower, right?
right.
Because like it was a startup. It was carving out a brand new industry. This is back when it was Coco. Um, there were really tight deadlines, really tight constraints. Um, we were, as an organization, more project management based
Mm-hmm.
than big idea creative based, right?
Yeah,
Everything had to tie back to a result. And I just, yeah, it just, that was where I would say I felt the most alive, like, like all firing on all cylinders, because you're pushing towards revenue, There's a clear definition of done. There isn't just, this ongoing nebulous, like,
Yeah.
we don't know if it's good enough yet. Like, it's out the door and it's generating the results that it needs to be generating.
Yeah, one of the things that we do in Coalition 9 is we have the Make a Difference assessment. And so if our listeners don't understand what that is, that's it's a personality profile assessment, and it's kind of like DISC or Miller-Hyman, but instead of it being like red, yellow, blue, green, or DISC, it's lion, camel, monkey, turtle. And you are a camel. And just that whole explanation of what you thrive on is like that the detail of things and the project management of things and the execution of things is so key in what makes you special. And there's so many people that are not wired that way, me included. And so, which I have a huge, admire that about you. Right. And so being able to apply that to business, and the camels are the ones that get it done. Right. And so to have, if you look back at that business, Coco at the time, let's just call it Coco because that's what it was that, I think it was not that long ago that co-working was not a thing. And they were so on the cutting edge of like where that was going. And Kyle and Don were just visionaries in that whole grand scheme of things. I think they were like one of 10 in the entire United States, pre-WeWork, pre all that other stuff, that were just so thoughtful about this approach. And I bet you that was just so cool to be a part of that and help guide you into some of the things you wanted to do in the future.
Yeah, 100%. And I will say that learning my the ability to organize big ideas and the creativity needed to see those ideas through was definitely something that got sharpened at Field. I remember one of my one-on-ones with Kyle. I reported directly to the CEO, and the co-founder Don. And I remember, in the meeting going, I get a lot of energy from, organizing big ideas and getting them done. And it was almost like they both looked at me and was like, well duh. Yeah, here's a bigger idea that we're gonna go tackle. And I remember feeling like, yeah, these guys get it. They recognize the value that I bring to the team, and they're trusting me to get this done. And like that feeling, and just knowing that I'll be able to leverage their years of experience, their vision for the business, to guide that outcome that I'm responsible for shepherding. It was transformational.
So in that whole process and being around a couple of entrepreneurs, when did you feel like your switch flipped to where it was your turn to kind of carve your own path and dive into entrepreneurship?
It was, we had created a new entity. This is when Coco became Field Collective. And up until that point, we like to think about things in terms of tours of duty, right? So, what's the tour of duty that you're on right now?
Yeah.
And the tour of duty that I was on at the moment was packaging a repeatable system for marketing for the that a franchisee could just pick up and run with, right?
Yeah.
So that meant it couldn't be artisan, it couldn't be precious. It had to be someone could take it, understand the system, and go get it done.
Yeah.
And working on that and doing all the research, needing to figure out what needed to be a part of the system and so on, which the buzzword right now is RevOps, but there wasn't a name on it back then.
Yeah.
Being able to I mean, it's a co-working space, right? So there's tons of entrepreneurs, tons of startups, and just realizing that everybody had the exact same problem, right? Like marketing is a black hole. If you have $100,000 or if you have $30,000, your solution is going to cost $100,000 or it's going to cost $30,000, right?
Right.
um, it was just seeing that there was that big of a total addressable market with the exact same problem at the exact same time. Once that tour of duty was done, the announcement was the franchise was announced, and we started down that path, figuring out what I was going to do next. I think it was time um, to to start down the path that I saw my parents on
Mm-hmm.
for us as a family, which was my wife and my son,
Yeah.
Andre, Joanna, and Andre. So that was the genesis. That's when I knew it was like, look, there's a big enough market. I have a repeatable system that can be sold. This is a clear need that can result in, successful businesses.
Yeah.
So let's package it and go help other businesses.
So then you created Forage. Forage was alive for a short amount of time, but then
Mhm.
you decided to take that and roll it into Curious, and now you're a partner at Closers Media. And I feel like there's probably some other things that I don't even know about that are like I said that at the beginning, man. Like you're a serial entrepreneur, so there's probably other things bubbling around, and I'm not asking you to like get into any of that stuff, but like you have your hands full and there's a lot of different things that you do. So give me the overview of like where is the what I want you to talk a little bit about is that flywheel effect between what Curious does and then what Closers does and then how they feed off of each other.
Yeah. I can give you, let me paint a picture of what it looks like when it's humming on all cylinders, with the reason why it came to be, right? So
Mhm, mhm.
I one of the this will be like a defining moment of my career at Field, going toe to toe with WeWork, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So game recognized game, like those guys, their marketing was like aggressive
Right.
and um, literally difficult to navigate around, right? And I remember it, you know, you're responsible for marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads, right? That was my area of responsibility. When you look at our um, our leadership team dashboard, like those were two metrics that I was responsible for. And my entire, career up until that point was all around marketing, right? So design and all the things that are necessary in order to create a a a brand, if you will, right?
Hmm, hmm.
Recognizable brand. But on the other side, in order for that brand to actually deliver on cash flow, it has to be aligned with the needs that people are willing to pay money for, right? So there's this
Right.
clear marketing and sales, right? Like the two have to be working closely together.
Yep.
And I realized, so my original vision for Forage was to be that operational catalyst between sales and marketing, right? And I realized that you know with Curious, they were originally a client, right? And we just kept getting asked to do things together. Like
Hmm.
they would get uh a creative project, and they're like, well, we want to get some we need to tie the creative back to revenue. Okay, well, Forge can help with that.
Yeah.
And I would go, okay, well, here is the master plan for how marketing and sales align. Here's how much it's going to cost, so on and so forth, for clients that I was getting pulled into. But somebody needed to do the creative execution, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it
Hmm.
just it was like peanut
It's
butter
too
and
good to
jelly.
be true, right? Like
It's too good
it
to be
just
true.
needed to happen.
So we just said, you know what, like this is confusing um, to clients. Let's just roll it up under one and go after more business together.
Yeah.
So that's how like Forge got folded into Curious, right?
Gotcha.
It became this, like, you know, Sherwin is my business partner, is actually worked with him on the Fuel Collective rebrand. So like I know dude delivers, right? Yeah. And he actually said, you know, can I say this? Yeah, I can say this. Working with him in this structure saved me $50,000 on the rebrand.
Nice.
Right.
Right.
So like
the proof was there.
Dollars and cents, right?
Yeah.
So you merge those two things together, it's unstoppable, right? And Jason, you know, is able to see things that I wouldn't necessarily see from a digital marketing perspective and bring that to bear as well. So the end result is we end up with more cost efficient solutions that we provide to our clients, right?
Yep. Gotcha.
That's everything up until things enter the pipeline, right?
Yeah. Right.
So we got the marketing, lead gen, prospect, like all that, you know, the stuff that you think marketing is responsible for, a cost efficient way of getting that done, right?
Gotcha.
There was always a missing piece, right?
Hmm.
Which was, okay, once something is thrown over the fence, or, you know, in the sales metaphor, into the pipeline, now what?
Right.
Right.
And
that,
to be fair too, like this is where a lot of clients probably trip up, right? Like they get all the leads in, and the demand generation happens, lead gen happens, leads come in the door. Let's say there's 100 leads, and then if their inability to close, I'm kind of giving you a lead in here, but their inability to close is their fault, right? Like, but then who gets blamed for it? The marketing firm, because it all comes down to ROI. So, so I teed you up. So explain that, like this flywheel effect that you've got going.
yeah. So that's what Closures Media does, like sales
Love it.
training, like just virtual sales training. Like if you were to, you know, quick question turn, what does Closures Media do?
Yep.
Sales training.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, Mikolai and I are buddies, and he and Allison are your business partner. And boy, you couldn't ask for a better like partner. But first of all, like, can we just address the fact that you couldn't find a more different personality in Mikolai than you guys? Like, you're talking about a camel with you, and then he's like this crazy monkey, but boy, you guys get it done, and you're killing it for your clients. And the success stories that I'm hearing from everybody, congratulations on that. That is such a fantastic story of how that's all coming together.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. It has been fun to get to know both Mikolai and Ellie, just, you know, so much more throughout this whole process. That they're an amazing team.
Yeah.
And, you know, Mikolai's superpower, you know, to your point, is helping to instill confidence in someone as a part of the sales process and not make it feel like what's the word I'm looking for? The stereotypical, the bad rap that sales tend to get.
The sales guy.
The sales guy. Mikolai
Right.
has mastered the art of accomplishing the outcome of sales without any of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something that has been missing from the sales world, in my opinion. And he's created a system or a training process that allows it to be taught to anyone, which is absolutely amazing.
It
So,
is.
you know, end to end, right? So to continue down the peanut butter and jelly analogy, you know, if during the sales process you're hearing why customers are buying from you, why they love you, all that good stuff, right? That's fed directly back to the messaging and the strategy around that marketing is doing, right? And where marketing is responsible for finding out, where are these people, what are their pain, when is it the right time to get in front of them, what is the, and I'm paraphrasing Sherman here, the way that he thinks about branding is, there's table stakes in your industry, but then there is a messaging strategy that differentiates you, right? That has to be authentic, it has to be believable, and it has to be, verifiable, right? Like you have to have proven success with what you do. Knowing what, coming from hearing from sales in real time, what customers are valuing and updating your messaging just applies to so many things. Marketing materials, your social media campaigns, your how you show up at which conferences you choose to go to. Like this baseline stuff, once it's there, now you have the building blocks that you can build a revenue engine around, right? Hence the term RevOps, right? You have marketing in a predictable way and you have sales in a predictable way. Together, you have a predictable path to revenue that your leadership team can get behind.
So, you guys, I will say, like, you just did a great job about talking about your partners, but they're both firms are wildly successful, and I can only see one common denominator. So I want to make sure and Mikolai will be on a future episode, and I'll give him shout outs. He'll probably end up talking about you for 5 minutes, but I wanted to make sure that that, you're the common denominator in here of two successful firms. So let me just get that out of the way. And then,
Appreciate that.
yeah, man. So here's my final question before we get into the fun part of the podcast. So paint me a little bit of a picture of what does the next 3 to 5 years of marketing look like? And I know that you can't address this in a short period of time. So I'm asking you for everyone's sake, just to give it a little bit of an overview of what this all looks like.
Yeah, I'd say moving forward, sales teams are gonna have to have a working understanding of what marketing does, and marketing is gonna need to understand what the best sales folks are doing, and build tools, processes, systems to support that, to create that flywheel that we mentioned earlier, right? So the two disciplines that tend to be at odds with each other are gonna have to get kind of on the same page, and they're all going to be accountable when leadership teams start to say, okay, is the marketing leader or the sales leader, in the right seat, if you will? Are they doing what we expect them to do? It's all going to be tied to revenue together. Like, are you both working towards the common goal, which is the revenue goals of the organization? The thing that they're all going to have in common is an understanding of pipelines, right? How do you get people into the pipeline? How do you get people through the pipeline? And how can marketing support you along the buyer's journey? And that throughput, right? Sales is going to have to be sharing with marketing what's working, what can we do more of. There's going to have to be more synergy between the two. And they're going to have to break down silos.
Yeah, I think that you're starting to see it now, and there's more and more organizations that maybe have a little bit more body to them from a growth standpoint. They're starting to have chief revenue officers, or they're starting to merge. I think it's going to be an antiquated approach in the future to have a sales team and a marketing team, right? Like, it's going to be a revenue team, and they're all sharing in the wins and losses and idea sharing and all of those other things that go along with bringing one team together. So I do agree with you in that respect. It needs to happen a little faster than what we've seen it, because even, I can think of a handful of businesses that I have friends that are within. They have sales and marketing teams separated, and they don't cross pollinate. I do think that there's that aspect of things that needs to happen more in the future.
Yeah, and the way that starts is everybody just needs to get excited about the numbers, right?
Right.
Managerial finance, boring stuff like cash flow, right? Like free cash flow. Like everyone's going to have to start to use that language to filter their area of expertise through.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see it, like to your point, like you're starting to see it more and more now. I expect we'll start to hear that be a prerequisite for people's success.
Yeah. Good, man. All right. We're going to dig into this. I'm just making a hard transition right into the 9 questions. So
Boom.
those of our listeners that don't know how this goes, I'm going to ask Garrio 9 questions. They are going to be, so first thing, you have no idea what I'm about to ask you. This is going to be relatively uncomfortable because you are so process driven. And so let's have a little bit of fun with this.
All right, let's do it.
No, there's no time constraints. So just let it fly as it comes natural. Think about it, but not too long to where our listeners need to go take a bathroom break. All right. Describe yourself in 3 words.
Hopeful, driven, father.
I love it. Very nice. When I say the word leader, who do you immediately think of?
My mom.
Well, good one. Who was your favorite cartoon character as a child?
Favorite cartoon character? Just because he's the one that popped into my head when I said that, it's 2, Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry. All right, I love it. Were they any way a part of the whole Woody Woodpecker thing, or were they just their own separate thing? No, it was, never mind. It was Chilly Willy. Chilly Willy was part of Woody Woodpecker. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent.
Under
I don't
WB?
know.
I don't know.
I don't know. All right. Anyway, sorry. All right. I digress. All right. Garrio, I want you to close your eyes.
All right.
What is your favorite sound?
White noise.
That's not what I expected you to say. Oh, that's so great. That's what I love about that one. That's hilarious. All right. All right. That was fun. If you had a time machine, where would you go and why?
Where would I go and why? I would go forward into the future and just
what date? What year?
What year? So I'm not sure the exact year, but I do know what's going on. I want to fast forward to the future and see what my son is up to.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like,
but still be able to come back so you can use it against him.
So I can use it against him.
Yeah. I love it.
Like fast forwarding to the future and just going like, is the path that we are on, the decisions that we're making, because life comes at you, but just knowing that the choices and decisions that we're making are leading to the outcome, that we want as a family. And I'm looking at got a little bit of a couple photos here that's above my screen, and it's of trips we've gone on as a family, visiting my parents, have we been able to do those things, is what I would like to see.
Awesome. What time do you normally go to bed and what time do you normally wake up?
Try to get in bed by 10. It's a moving target. But I'm usually up at 6 because that's usually when Andre starts stirring. So that's when I'm up.
I like hearing that. That's a good solid 8 if you're going by 10 to 6. If you get 8 hours of sleep, that's like Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. All right. We don't need to get into like the sleepless, restless part of that, but yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, podcast, man. Like you got to get the reps in. Podcasts and
Yeah.
audiobooks, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
All right. What one piece of advice do you always find yourself coming back to?
One piece of advice that I always find myself coming back to. I'm not sure if I don't know the exact words, but something that my dad like constantly drove home to me that is still a thing that stays with me is whenever you're doing something, whatever decision you're making, if it's, you're unsure of the outcome or any of that, make sure that you are being true to yourself and making that decision. Whether the outcome is good or bad, you can look back at the decision with integrity, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that has been I'm sure he'll love to hear that I actually heard him when he said that. Like I have internalized that piece of advice, and I try to instill it with my son, and I share that advice often with folks.
Awesome. I love it.
Standing in the future, looking back, can you say you made the decision with integrity?
Yeah. Very well said. What's your go-to source for inspiration?
Inspiration. Audiobooks.
Audiobooks?
Yeah.
Great. Anyone in particular you want to give a plug to? You got a whole bunch of books behind you, but I don't think they're all hard copies. Any audio? What's your audiobook that you're listening to right now?
Right now, I am listening to How Great Leaders Speak. I believe that's what it's called.
Awesome.
And it's breaking down, the language. How leaders speak. It's breaking down the language of good leaders.
Good. What drives you?
Family. Just, my wanting to model the behavior just like my dad modeled behavior for me. I want to model that same sort of drive and integrity to my son, while applying the lessons that I learned from the things that my dad would have done differently, right?
Yeah. Man, that was it. 9 questions and you answered them all very thoughtfully. You killed it. Thank you so much. Garrio Harrison, you're an amazing individual. Where can people find you?
The easiest starting point is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Hop on LinkedIn and branch out from there.
Awesome. All right. Well, Garrio, thank you so much for being on our podcast this week. I can't thank you enough. Listeners, make sure that you take some time to get to know Garrio Harrison. Check out his LinkedIn profile. I literally think that if you type in Garrio Harrison into the LinkedIn search box, he's the only one that comes up.
I'll be the guy in the t-shirt with the coffee mug.
That's right. And then Garrio, and if anybody else wants to chat with you or follow you on Peloton, it's at Garrio. And I know you put that on there, so you're cool with that. So I want to make sure that I don't know anybody who loves his Peloton more than Garrio does. All right. So on behalf of Garrio Harrison, this has been the Power of 9 podcast. I'm your host, Eggert, and I want to thank you for the privilege of your time.